Caleb Williams and the Bears often shined in preseason week 2, while Raiders rookie running back Ashton Jeanty was looking like Pete Carroll's new beast mode out on the field. We react to week 2 of the preseason and the latest NFL news on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with the NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today, we are going to react to what happened during week 2 of the preseason. Plus, towards the end, we'll go through some latest NFL news and rumors. A big rumor about Brian Robinson Jr. maybe getting traded from the Commanders. So we'll discuss and dig into all of that. But first, we have to talk about the Chicago Bears and what they did on Sunday and their preseason game. Particularly that first drive was very, very exciting, right? Caleb Williams and the starting offense play the first 2 drives. Second drive doesn't really go anywhere, but that first drive, Caleb Williams gets 97 passing yards and 6 pass attempts, completes all but 1 pass. He has the long touchdown to Olamide Zaccheaus for 36 yards. But like he's spreading the ball around Caleb Williams. 2 targets to Coltson Loveland on that first drive, 1 target to Cole Kmet, gets a target to DJ Moore. But overall, Caleb Williams looked confident out there and looked really, really good. And I mean, at this point, I'm feeling more and more confident with our Caleb Williams ranking. We have him ranked well ahead of average draft position, and we have for pretty much this whole preseason or offseason. But I have him ranked as quarterback 8. You have him at quarterback 9. He's currently sitting at quarterback 15 in average draft position. This has to go up, right? Like, I don't get what's taking so long for people to push up Caleb Williams in the draft.
I think there's a little bit of trepidation, Michelle. I think on this show, we've been particularly aggressive. You have, especially about Patrick Mahomes and not putting him in there, that I've been thinking about, do I really want to invest in Kyler Murray and Bo Nix and that little stretch there before we get to Dak Prescott? So, yeah, I think there's just a little bit leaning on where they finished last year a little bit, and that's not the case at quarterback. Things always turn, like we saw Baker Mayfield, right? Flipped completely. Like he went from just an afterthought in fantasy to a legit fantasy value and steal last year when he finished in the top 6. And there's always guys like this. Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, these guys were underrated as well, and they ended up being as strong as top 10 QBs as you could get for their draft cost, right? So Caleb Williams' draft cost, I'm really surprised it's not gone up. Maybe there's reports of Bears camp of him struggling, right? There's been a lot of those reports. And also maybe we were let down last year. But he was a rookie in a bad offense. This is the Ben Johnson offense that gave you Jared Goff producing like a top 10 QB. So this is a different offense, and he's operating it. And look, who cares if he's not practicing well? And I think we maybe overreact to some of the practices. If the lights come on and he plays well, that's what you're looking for. And I was happy because a lot of teams haven't been doing much this preseason. But it was nice to see a team out there showing us what we wanted in primetime situation, giving us, hey, this is the type of offense we're going to be. So that was very helpful because some of these teams are playing their cards close to the vest, don't show us what they're doing, but they went all out and said, these are some of the elements you're going to see everything. I mean, we saw the receivers out there. We saw the 2 tight end sets. So all those things that were kind of advertised and teased with Ben Johnson were out there. Now, Caleb played well all around, but as we might have surmised, it's going to be hard to figure out the pecking order of where to trust all these receivers and tight ends and what we can get out of them. I think that played here, but definitely Caleb is the guy that's going to tie it all together, and I feel really confident about him putting him in the top 12.
Yeah, and sometimes with those practice reports, it's so hard to decipher if that quarterback was just trying to test things out. Like practice is the time to test out what you can get away with, what windows you can get away with and whatnot. And that's the time they can do it without, being too worried about, losing their job or anything like that. So I am fine if practice is a little rough sometimes and he comes out and just balls out in actual games. Now, with Coltson Loveland, we just did our tight end rankings episode and I had him buried in my rankings. And listen, he played 9 of the 14 snaps with the starters. Cole Kmet, though, out there for 10 of the 14 snaps with starters. So they're both out there. quite often. And Cole Kmet is the one that saw the 2 targets on that first drive, saw that long catch. Cole Kmet also saw a really nice long, he had a 29-yard reception on that first drive too. I still think it's too crowded for Coltson Loveland to be a consistently good tight end as a rookie. But I will agree that my ranking where I had him so buried down low at like tight end 28, I have moved him up. I have him now more towards you in the lower teens, right? Like tight end 19 I'm sitting at because I do prefer him over, like he does have way more upside than guys like Dalton Schultz or Theo Johnson or Tyler Conklin. So I'm going to move him up because of his upside. And if anything happens to Cole Kmet, then obviously it could be huge for him. It's hard to figure out where these targets are going to go because Caleb Williams is certainly spreading the ball around.
Yeah, and other than Arthur Smith, Ben Johnson has employed 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, relatively frequent, right? And Arthur Smith does it poorly in a lot of cases and doesn't get the tight ends open, but that was the struggle, right? I mean, getting the combination of Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts when they were both in Atlanta together, trying to figure out how to get that going. I mean, it was hard. And now we're going to see that with Pat Freiermuth in Pittsburgh and trying to see how that works with Jonnu Smith. But now this is a similar situation, right? Cole Kmet is just not trash, right? He did get a new contract from this team not too long ago. He was a pretty good receiver. Like, he's still a very good receiving tight end. I think Loveland is also kind of a receiving tight end. I don't think there's a lot of blocking to be had, and I don't know if that's the design of what they're looking for. But everyone's probably comparing it to, okay, Colston Loveland is going to be the new Sam Laporta, and I get that. But again, remember some of the dudes that he was fighting with at tight end. I mean, they were throwing out random guys. I think Zylstra and all these guys that were trying to get targets, and they cut into it a little bit, right? So Cole Kmet is better than all those kind of committee lines tight ends. And he's going to be on the field consistently. That's a concern, but it's also a concern that you're going to have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, 2 pretty good players in their own right as the top receivers. So it could get split here. I think you'll see a little bit of Luther Burden when they have to go use him when they go 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. But I think that group of the third targets is going to be really spread around when you get past Moore and Odunze.
Yeah, Luther Burden didn't play a single snap with the starters, but he did have 3 receptions for 49 yards in the game. He came in after the starters were out. It's just going to be too hard to ever put him into your lineup early on in the season until there's maybe injuries or maybe we're just surprised by his usage. But for now, he's really not someone I'm interested in drafting. But Rome Odunze, we talked about him during our wide receiver rankings that we were really high on him to start the offseason, and we've been slowly pushing him down. He's sitting as wide receiver 35 in average draft position. We have him wide receiver 33 and wide receiver 35 in our ranks. He did play every single snap with the starters, 14 of 14 snaps, but only saw 1 target. And Caleb Williams did have 10 pass attempts out there. The target was not completed. So any worries about Rome Odunze, or is it just kind of the same worries where if his target share doesn't increase, then you're probably going to be very disappointed with your draft pick?
Yeah, this is a hard thing to figure out because there's been different things said by Ben Johnson. They're like, okay, we're going to use Rome Odunze all over the field. Then we're going to use DJ Moore all over the field. So we're not quite sure who's the go-to guy between these two and who's the better value. But you'd think if we're not sure, right, then the cheaper, better value is the guy that's going later at the wide receiver 35, 36. I mean, right now you have to invest wide receiver 20 on DJ Moore. That's a significant difference, right? I mean, 15 spots at a position for some ambiguity on knowing who is the guy that's going to see the most targets. I think it's fair to say, right, from Caleb Williams, who's going to lead the team in targets between these 2 guys. It's hard. This is what we're trying to figure out. Who's more the Amon-Ra St. Brown and who's more the Jameson Williams? Who do they view more as the deep threat that does things? I think if you did that and you really did an analysis, you'd say Odunze is a lot more like St. Brown, and DJ Moore is a big play guy, much like Williams, that you can move around and get big plays if you like hand the ball off, right, or do reverse plays with all that, which they do with Jameson Williams. So that's how we kind of have to figure out this puzzle, right? Try to figure out what Ben Johnson did in Detroit, apply it here, adjust it, and then spit it out to what we want in fantasy. And it's getting difficult because it's not the same personnel, not the same veteran quarterback. He might have different quirks on who he leans on. Could be favoring 2 guys over the rest. It could be the Odunze Loveland show because they're the 2 young guys, but we're not 100% sure. But The one thing we're sure about, Michelle, is you want some good pieces of this offense. Ben Johnson offense with Caleb Williams operating. Take your shots at this offense because more times than not, they're going to produce what you would like.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to get to some other preseason games and reactions from there, including Ashton Jeanty just looking as advertised, everything that we want him to be. We'll get to that and, the latest NFL news right after a quick break.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes, but now you know exactly what works for you. It is therapy. With so much information around about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help you. Well, BetterHelp is here to help you. That's why talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. Really, therapy has been outstanding for me. I go regularly to a therapist and just to keep me on track. And they're kind of the GPS I need, the roadmap that's going to help me find what I need in life to guide me through some of the challenges that we go through personally and professionally. So, and really with BetterHelp, they're going to sort it so it's easy to fit in your schedule, just a click to connect. You can even switch therapists at any time if you need to. There's more than 30,000 therapists to choose from. So BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. Check it out. Talk it out here with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month only at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/lockedon to take advantage of that 10% offer to get started with therapy today, only from BetterHelp. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show, and we will talk about other teams that aren't the Chicago Bears. Ashton Jeanty, he had -3 yards in his debut, and everyone was freaking out. What do we do? He's the worst rusher on the Raiders team. Then the real Ashton Jeanty decided to show up in week 2 of the preseason. 33 yards, touchdown, 7 carries against the 49ers. He's going still very high. He didn't really change his draft cost all that much after the first game. RB6, 14 overall. Now, we said be wary of some of this, but does this make you rethink, is he worth that high of a cost? Basically, not that far after the big three of Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I was never worried about it, but it was great to see him out there. And I mean, just bulldozing guys. He had 2 fantastic runs, including the touchdown run where he was just carrying people into the goal line. And that's what he did at Boise State, right? Like he's that big, powerful back that can be just like beast mode or Marshawn Lynch for Pete Carroll, but then also such a good receiving back as well. Like that's a very rare combination to find. And I just think what he showed us on the field in preseason week 2, we're going to get way more of that. He's going to be hyper utilized. And I'm absolutely fine with his running back 6 costs. I feel like over this offseason, he's gone anywhere from like, especially over the last month or so, been all the way up at like running back 3, now running back 6. I'm fine if you want to take him all the way up at running back 4. Like if you're worried about Derrick Henry's age or maybe his touchdowns go down or Christian McCaffrey's injury history, I'm fine with taking that shot on Jeanty. It's always going to be risky to take that early of a cost on a rookie, but I am personally okay with it.
Yeah, and the volume just lines up perfectly with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, what they want to do. Then you take a pressure off the quarterback and the passing game with Geno Smith. They need to do this quite a bit. It's the style and system here, the spread concepts. I think that's going to give Jeanty some running lanes as well as having Colton Miller and some guys up front to open some holes for him. So it should be a very run-heavy offense, and I'm really excited about Jeanty. But again, it's going to be a tough decision when you get to Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry and Devin Achane. Where do you go? Do you pull the trigger on one of the older guys, or do you go with the rookie that has no mileage on him in the NFL? Now, Jackson Dart, I don't know what he's going to have to do to win this job, Michelle. Looks like Russell Wilson's still on track to start. The other rumor with the Giants is they might not carry Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. If Dart is this good, then Dart would be the backup, and they'd keep Tommy DeVito, I guess, for developmental young purposes, just because they like him maybe. But in looking at this, I mean, 14 for 16, the second great outing, good rushing, good passing, scored each way. I want to see him out on the field. I don't know what Brian Daboll has to lose at this point. You mentioned the Giants' rough schedule. I think they should just maybe just give him the job now at this point. I don't care what happens with that rough schedule. They're probably going to lose enough games. Wilson's going to be on the bench anyway. Brian Daboll might as well see what he can do with this rookie quarterback.
Yeah, the only worries is that if it's such a rough schedule and, the Giants are just getting destroyed and Dart's getting all this pressure, like that can kind of ruin his development. But I do think Russell Wilson's days are numbered because the schedule's so hard. He's going to lose a lot of games. And Dart is just looking really, really great in the preseason so far. Another great outing in week 2. So, yeah, I don't see a reason for this team to keep Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart. You want to go there, Brian Daboll came out today and said Russell Wilson's still their week 1 starter. Nothing has changed. But then have Jackson Dart be the backup. Trade Jameis Winston to the Saints because, oh my goodness, the Saints quarterbacks are as bad as we thought they would be, right? No one's shocked, but we thought, okay, maybe the Saints know more than we do. They do not. Tyler Shook cannot take over Spencer Rattler. And it's not because Spencer Rattler's like playing great. They both stink. Right. So this team is going to be really rough for fantasy outside of Alvin Kamara just getting a bunch of short receptions and making his fantasy value in that area. But they need a trade for Jameis Winston if he's available because this offense is going to be pitiful.
Yeah, I think the one pivot you would make, it's much like the Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson deal. And here's how. I mean, Tyler Shough is a good deep ball thrower, not the best intermediate thrower. So I think for our assets, we actually may want Spencer Rattler out because out there because he would give us the checkdowns to Kamara a little bit more. I think he would give us the underneath routes if we're hoping to extract something from Juwan Johnson or hoping that Chris Olave can have some kind of rebound, right? I think for Rashid Shaheed and its purposes in getting him going deep, maybe Shough is the better quarterback. But again, this is an offense in general outside of Kamara that you really want to avoid. And I've said, is this the march for Arch, going for Arch Manning? It could also be the fuss for Nuss because Doug Nussmeier is the dad of Garrett Nussmeier, who's the LSU quarterback and top prospect. So maybe they're just looking ahead for next year. That's what it seems like, tanking this a little bit. I'm not saying they're directly tanking, but they just said, why bother in trying to get anything right at quarterback when we can wait for next year and there's going to be a pick of some guys we can get. So this year we just have to manage, and Kamara might be the only person you really want to feel good about taking from the Saints team.
Now, Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson, they struggled to connect in week 2. The Jets offense looked like they have for the last decade, right? Just miserable. But Fields goes 1 for 5 for 4 passing yards. He plays on 3 drives. He did lead a touchdown drive, not from him, but on that first drive for the Jets. But Garrett Wilson, 3 targets, 0 catches. The one completion Fields had for the day was a 4-yard catch of rookie tight end Mason Taylor. So, I mean, this is what you're going to have to worry about with Fields, right? Are the inconsistencies still there? Can he get Garrett Wilson good catchable targets? And I think that kind of lies into their ADP, and that's why they're going where they are. Now, Ricky Pearsall was targeted 4 times on the 49ers opening drive with Brock Purdy starting. Brock Purdy looked great, by the way, but those 4 targets turned into 3 receptions for 42 yards. I've been talking about Ricky Pearsall all offseason long. I absolutely love him. There's no reason he's sitting at wide receiver 43, average draft position. Draft him, guys. Draft him. He has top 12 upside. I have him ranked as wide receiver 27 because of the risk, but I absolutely love him this year.
Yeah, and he's crept up. As we've talked about him, he's up there near wide receiver 3 territory, folks. I mean, he's wide receiver 38 now, and I think people have some clarity on, okay, Brandon Ayuk's not going to be ready. Juwan Jennings has been banged up, or look like they want to feature Pearsall after George Kittle quite a bit here. Brock Purdy's been locked in. So, look, I kind of like targeting Purdy and Fields as 2 guys I really like. I also like attaching them with their receivers. Now, Fields and Wilson didn't show us all that much, but I would love to attach Purdy with Kittle or Purdy with Pearsall and go from there. And I think you can get good value here. So 2 other guys that kind of are falling out of the top 10 at quarterback where I wouldn't panic too much about Fields because what is Fields going to get you? It's the running. He's going to take off and run when things break down. That's what he's going to do. Purdy, we wanted to see him be precise and look good with the weapons he has healthy, and that has occurred here. So Purdy and Fields continue to be the best values. I wouldn't read too much either way into either of these situations.
All right, we have some injury updates to go through, some rumors about Brian Robinson Jr. possibly getting traded. And then we also have a date for Rashee Rice's suspension case set. So we'll get to all of that to end today's episode right after we hear from another one of our sponsors. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, like always, Vinnie and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and the updates are rolling out this month are wild in the best way. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, don't worry. You can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, big news popped up that Brian Robinson Jr. might be getting shopped by the Commanders. And it's interesting because they also announced he will not be playing in tonight's preseason game. Now, maybe they wouldn't have played him anyways, but he will not be suited up. And that gives us even more, heat on this trade rumor and a lot of hype over rookie Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, right? And that could be a big reason why they're open to trading Brian Robinson Jr. as well. So, I mean, does this move up Austin Eckler? Should he be trending up? He's sitting at running back 44 average draft position right now. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is barely even being drafted in most leagues, but he's a 7th-round rookie. And like I said, getting so much buzz out of camp. So what are your thoughts on this backfield if Brian Robinson Jr. were to get traded?
Yeah, keep in mind Brian Robinson Jr. is a holdover from the previous offense, and I think they've tried to make it work in the Cliff Kingsbury scheme, but it's not quite worked. And if you're looking for just people that he might fit with outside of this organization, you could look at the Jets where Scott Turner is employed. He was with the Commanders. And you could also look at the Bears, right? I don't think they are totally out of the picture on a complementary power back potentially to DeAndre Swift based on having Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monaghan, the rookies. So they could be a team as well because you have Eric Bieniemy there and he has a Commanders tie-in as well. So those are two teams I would look at. The other team, I know Commanders fans are not going to like this, and they're probably not going to be able to pull off this trade. It's the Cowboys. I would look at Brian Robinson Jr. if I'm the Cowboys because they don't have that type of runner, I don't think, on their roster between Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. No. I mean, Jaden Blue is already hurt, the rookie from Texas. So I think he's going to get picked up right away. I just don't think I would trade for him. That's my take here. Is like I just don't think you can invest. He's just a guy at this point. I mean, he was a good scorer and he did some things early, but that was in a different offense. So we'll see. I don't think they're going to get much for him in terms of the Commanders. I think Eckler has some value, but they're going to spread the ball around quite a bit. And that's my concern here. And you also have a running quarterback. How many checkdowns do you get? How many rushing touchdowns do you get because of Jaden Daniels? So just be careful about not overdrafting Eckler or JCM, as I'm now going to call him, because Brian Robinson Jr. is on the block.
Yeah, but I mean, if he does get traded, I'm definitely going to take JCM, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I like the JCM, but with one of my last picks in the draft, just in case, he gets the workload. Because Austin Eckler at 30 years old, I just don't think he's going to get a huge workload. I will say, though, in the 2 games that he had at least 10 carries last year, he scored 15.8 and 17.6 points. So he still got it done when he was asked to handle the majority of the work on the ground. But it's going to be hard to trust him, but it will become very interesting if this 7th-round rookie can break out in year 1. Now, when you brought up Brian Robinson Jr. going to Dallas, that's like the one team that makes a ton of sense, but it's in division, and it would help the Cowboys out tremendously because we say he's just a guy, but it's a massive upgrade to what they have. And Miles Sanders yesterday was pitiful for the Cowboys. Javonte Williams isn't getting much love either coming out of camp. So the only other team I could see that maybe could be interesting is the Dolphins. Alexander Madison's out for the year. He was shining in camp as a backup. Jalen Wright absolutely stinks. And Devin Achan's already dealing with an injury. So I think that would stink for Devin Achan if they traded for him, because then it would be more of a 1-2 punch. But I could see maybe them looking that way. Now, Rashee Rice had his suspension case set for September 30th. So unless something changes before the season where there's a settlement and a suspension could come down then before the season. But right now it's looking like he's going to be here to start the season, but then be gone after the week 4, right? So he'd be good for the first 4 weeks. And then if that suspension comes down after that case, then he could miss, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 10 games. It's really still up in the air. His ADP right now is still sitting at wide receiver 24, 55th overall. He's going around guys like DK Metcalf and DJ Moore and Xavier Worthy and Teteroa McMillan and Devonta Smith. I would rather just take any of those guys, even if they don't have the same upside as Rashee Rice from what we saw in the beginning of last season and target share. I still would rather go with any of them over taking Rashee Rice.
Yeah, and so far, Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy have been going very close to each other as people are like trying to decide where they want to go with this Chiefs wide receiver core. I think they saw them as maybe being equal targets, but if Rice is about to miss time and Worthy is not, and Worthy is going to have to probably take on a bigger role when Rice is out, then you'd figure Worthy is a much better value. But you're right. Any of those names that are going right, I think you cannot think about Rashee Rice from 2 years ago. There's been an injury. There's this thing off field. Worthy wasn't on the team. So you can't think about that, right? You can't think about the last time we saw Rashee Rice. You can't think of the last time we saw Xavier Worthy. He's probably a better pick, but you mentioned McMillan and Moore and Metcalf. I think all these players are much better picks right now than Rice at this point, because they're not going to miss time this season. And look, there's a chance Rice may not miss time. I don't see that happening. So again, I go with Worthy or any of those other guys.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. Now, Malik Neighbors is dealing with a shoulder injury plus the toe injury that he's been dealing with like his whole career. But should we be worried that he's always banged up? Now, he played through the injuries last year and he obviously performed just fine, but he's going super high in drafts. Another injury to worry about. Wide receiver 5 in average draft position, 11th overall. Right now, he's going ahead of guys like Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, and Brian Thomas Jr. I think I would go with Nico Collins over Malik Neighbors. With Puka, you have to worry about Matthew Stafford injury, which he did. He's back at practice as of today. But Malik Neighbors is making me a little nervous that he's a risky pick, even though I'm really okay with his draft position too at the same time.
Yeah, he's fine. I just think he might be a little too high when you look at the production that we've seen from Collins. Don't forget about Monroe St. Brown, Nacua, and then, of course, going down, I love Brian Thomas Jr. So there's some guys that I don't know. I would think about taking over him just because of some of the things there. Look, the talent is off the charts good. And like I mentioned, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, maybe a little too rich there, right? I don't think they're so above that next group of wide receivers that I would go in that direction. And look, Neighbors does have the quarterback concern. I know Justin Jefferson has it too, but Malik Neighbors is legit, right? If you have Russell Wilson out there, it could be rough for him early. That could be all the difference you need. Trevor Lawrence, that's another story with Brian Thomas Jr. But again, I think it's wide open at wide receiver 3. I think it even starts at 3 because you have Lamb, Collins, Monroe St. Brown, all these guys, Nacua, we talked about all these guys. So any of those guys, I think, could be a worthy wide receiver 3 pick. So in some ways, like I want to be in a position to get Chase or Jefferson, or I might want to pick a little bit further down where I can get one of these tiered wide receivers and not maybe force the issue and a good value drops to me.
Now, Joe Mixon, there's news that he could miss the start of the season, at least week 1, with this foot/ankle injury. It does keep dropping in average draft position. He's sitting right now at running back 23 in average draft position. He keeps dropping consensus rankings all the way at running back 30. It's hard. It's really hard with him because he's dealt with ankle injuries before. We saw the regression last season after the ankle injury, right? Like he really struggled after starting really hot before that. They have Nick Chubb there. I can't get into the Joe Mixon.
Yeah, it's very hard to get into anything in the Texans offense other than Nico Collins, to be honest with you. Even CJ Stroud, I mean, pocket passing, how much is he going to produce without any consistent number 2, even going all the way going down to Dalton Schultz? I don't know if there's a legit target there. So now you look at the backfield. Look, I don't even know if Nick Chubb is value. He's going somewhere at RB 53, 58 in that range. And those picks, do I really feel like he's a value? Do I think there's anything left in his tank? It's hard to say. We just want to get to the point where oh, somebody's going to carry the ball for the Texans. It may be a very ineffective running game, and then we have issues, right? And they lost Larry Tunsil. This could be just an ugly offense, and maybe we're not thinking about as much. I mean, the Texans are back-to-back champions here in the division, but of all the champions of divisions, they're having the most difficulty this offseason. So just don't ride on things you had last year. So again, I might be willing to take a flyer on Chubb, but definitely mix in there, even at that RB30 cost, not doing it.
Yeah. Yep. And then lastly, Jordan Love underwent surgery on his non-throwing thumb. He's already back at practice. I don't think it's really going to change anything for his season. It is another injury that's popped up for him though, right? But we were already low on him to begin with, so this isn't going to change much for us. If you were high on him, I don't think it should change anything either. We just don't like his inconsistency. We don't love this Packers offense this year. So there's really not much to add there.
Yeah, I mean, we just want to see Jordan Love maybe be on the field so we can kind of get a read on where these targets are going to go across the board. And it's very hard to do that because Jane Reed is hurt. So that doesn't really help us, right? When his quote go-to guy, for lack of a better word, the last couple of years has not been on the field. So I don't really know what to do. I think Matthew Golden does have a good opportunity here, but really needs to get the snaps and targets to make it happen here. We just have to see that play out. But again, things might part really for Golden to have to be a key factor in this passing game.
Absolutely. That will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy your first listen. Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We will be back tomorrow to talk more fantasy football goodness and get you ready and prepared for your fantasy football drafts. We will talk to you then. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.